Here goes. Bamberg Rauchbier, straight from Schlenkerla Brewery. Schlenkerla smoked beer. It has a distinct hint, if not dollop, of black forest ham about it. But I love it. The first three are terrible, but the fourth one is always good. Cheers.
Guys, thank you for doing this with us. I've got a pint full of yerba mate. Ariel has some coffee, and we have some really special guests today. We have our distributor from Germany, Thomas Kunzler, and our guest of honor, Zino Mirokey. How do I say it? Mirokey.
Zino Mirokey.
Yeah. Okay. Well, Zino is a mastering engineer from Berlin, and he's got a lot of experience, and he's been using our QA9 for some time now. And we're going to just kind of talk about mastering and the creative process using this new piece from Ayre that is kind of a re-release, I guess, for us. But yeah, it's backed by popular demand, I guess, and you guys are kind of the impetus of that. So maybe we can kind of start talking about
and Zino was the guy who, he was the guy who kicked it all off. 1.5 years ago, we tried to reconstruct what happened, but either he called or sent an email asking, is the QA9 still available? Do you still produce it? And I said, well, last I heard, they still had some parts and they could do new old stock, but I'll ask. And I asked, and you guys said, well, yeah, we still have about 50 of those ARDA chips that the QA9 was based on. And yeah, we could do it, I guess. And I think in the beginning, you thought you could do it within a couple of months, but you had difficulties sourcing or getting your chassis manufacturer to do the chassis like they used to be. Yeah. And but I'm glad we stuck with it. And Zino told me that he made some comparative files with the QA9 and other converters and sent them to friends who were all thrilled and excited. And so suddenly there was a larger order and you guys got going. And finally, a couple of months ago, we got the units over here to Germany, and Zino says everyone's happy with their unit. And so we've been in touch regularly, but we haven't spoken at length. I did watch a couple of interviews that Zino gave with studio guides or studio magazines here. And what I can say is, and talking to him now, just after I arrived, is he's very much attuned to the kind of stuff that normally we in the audiophile world kind of pay attention to. So thermal stability, things needing to warm up, correct phase, and things like that I haven't heard other sound engineers talk about as much. So he's our man right now.
Yeah, and so Zino, the number of units that we sent out to Germany, are those amongst most of your people in your network, friends of yours that are using it now, or?
Exactly. We back then said, like, how many units can I surely take? So we have something for you as well, that okay, we have, I think at some point we were at 8 units. Yeah, and then it got down over time, got down to 6 again. It was really about, because so my story with the unit is this. Greg Calby is my favorite mastering engineer, always has been. And he was using your QA9, but I think I saw a picture of his studio with the QA9 maybe like 8-9 years ago, and I was always wondering, what's this silver box? I didn't know it was an AD, I didn't know it was a DA, whatever it was. And I was always, because there's no close-ups, there's no big logo that says Ayre, you know, like the unit is pretty from a distance. If you have no idea what your company is, then it's like, okay, what is this unit? What is it? And it took me 2 years to find out what it was. And then I started reading on it. I read all the tests and I was like, oh my God, oh my God, oh my God, because all these special details like the filters or the zero feedback gain stage, the chip, these were all things where I thought like, oh my God, this is a special unit, you know. And I think over time, being hands down, building your own stuff. Sorry, my potatoes are
Potatoes.
Hey,
Zino's making a potato salad.
hey, I'm Irish, and there's nothing much more important than potatoes. Okay, so
Well, I heard this story an hour ago, so I'll just continue, okay? So he couldn't identify what this unit was, and it took him years to find out, and eventually he did. Did you guys know that Greg Calby had a QA9?
no, I don't know. No,
Oh, okay.
I'm looking
You
into
know,
it right
or
after.
maybe he had one. Yeah, and then
No, he's still using it.
he's still using it.
Yeah, yeah.
Okay.
It is
Then-
for him. It was the same. Like he tried so many. He had the Lovely Gold and da 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 da. All these units. I think he always used some other units in parallel as well. But his records were always sounding better. You know, they were same level as everyone, but it was just more clear, more open. So for me, I had so many ADs, and I always test. I constantly, a new product is out, something is hyped, I'm just gonna get it over as soon as I can to listen and evaluate myself, because you know how it is. Everything new gets hype. It is just the thing, because audio people need new shit. So yeah, that's I mean, that's the fun about it as well. So yeah, so it took me years to find out, and then I found out about the unit. Then you could buy one. And then it took me another 5 years to find a unit. I used the unit, and I found by accident the co-founder of Vivid Audio, Philip Gutentag. He was friends with your boss.
Yep.
So he bought QA9 to digitize his record collection, but he never used it. So I found this unit one day on Hi-Fi Shark, and then I wrote to him and I was like, oh, are you the Vivid guy? I was like, yeah. And then I was like, yeah, I have your speakers, etc. And then he gave me this first QA9, and it came to me, it was sealed, brand new. Like he bought it, never even opened the package. It was just a dream. For it's super crazy. Yeah, just really crazy. And the funny thing is, I had a chain that was a modified AD with the best ever measured 10 megahertz clock from Mutek. So not only like the best low jitter clock there is, but also the best one they've ever built and measured, with a weird prototype word clock cable from Japan that beat everything. So this whole chain was like a 14,000 euro chain with like components, like once in a lifetime, like there's one cable like this in the world, you know. And you always get the new Ayre word clock cable, because you want to have just like something, if it breaks, I'll have an alternative. Nothing ever came close to this. So at the beginning, I was just like, oh, I cannot use my insane clocking on this AD. But I plugged in the AD and it just beat it. It just beat my chain that won every other test. You know, I had all the Loveries and Prisms and Mytex, whatever, all the new shit always in, and my chain always beat everything. And then I plug it in, I'll just turn it up, and it beats it, but in such a weird way that I have never heard with conversion. And that is, I think it is the filter in the first place, like this no pre, no post filter. That is just gives a depth like nothing else. And you know, coming from this perspective of I have the best clock selected in the world, so depth will be an issue with an older design, you know, with not 10 megahertz crystal and all the madness that you can do now. So in the beginning, that was my biggest fear, like, okay, I'll maybe have like a better conversion, but then the clocking is not on par. But I think this, yeah, no post ring, no pre-ring filter gives a different access to the depth. So you have the feeling that the back walls have corners. So if the speakers are here, and then let's say the stereo slightly diminishes towards the back, but on the Q9 it stays. So you have these corners in the back that you can hear bright almost. And that was crazy. That was absolutely mental. And then the other point was the whole discrete design around the chip made it possible to clip it like mad. I don't clip it anymore, I have to say, but in the beginning, I was just like looking at the meters, and then you lower the level, so you get out of the clipping and you realize I just clipped the 7 dB. And obviously it's clipped, but in a way where everything analog before the AD chip does not diminish. So all you're doing is actually just clipping the AD chip. So the AD will just go like 0 full scale, 0 full scale, 0 full scale, but all the gain stages in front of it did not already crunch down the signal. So you're, you know what I mean? So yeah, as I said, I don't clip it anymore, but all my friends that just got their units, like how many months ago, 2, 3, 4 months ago, they are clipping like mad. And they're constantly sending me files where they clipped, you know, like there are some drum machines that are not good to clip. For example, a Linn drum is horrible to clip because the Linn drum has such a fast and also like legendary sort of, you know, this sound attack. If you clip it, it will immediately become a different kick drum. Maybe not worse, but a different kick drum. So a Linn, for example, is even like if I have a record I need to, or a song that has a Linn kick drum in, and I need to make this very loud, I will now automate the limiter for every kick drum, because the kick drum or the limiter will react differently if there's a big sustainy bass note underneath, or if the kick is just on its own. You know, for a limiter, that's 2 completely different signals. So on the, for example, on the solo kick, I need to have much longer release for the limiter to act a little slower on this initial attack. And if there's a big sustainy bass note underneath, it's, you know, the attack is only sticking out a little bit, so I can go with a faster release and stuff like that. And so even those like super hard to clip, make loud sounds are just, yeah, I don't know. It's just, everybody's just like constantly, when I talk to them, like this AD, and it's like, I know. In the beginning it was like this, because I had 2 studios and 2 of my friends were working from the other room that still had this old combination. But since when I was in the other room, I already had the QA9. And then when I moved to this studio, I just took the QA9 out and I left this crazy chain with them. And they were just complaining all the time that they need to have more limiters stacked. Everything is not as wide. It's not as easy. So I think that's a nice way also to look at Headroom, because the whole thing in itself, the whole system has so much headroom that you can even go over the limit and clip it, but you will still have full benefit of this headroom, because there's no dulling, no sort of, you know, like rounding off. And the other way to look at headroom is in macro dynamics. So a verse versus a chorus, or like the intro, those will all over a song tell you about the headroom of a unit. You know, like for example, the intro might be super low, or the first verse might be super low, so you're underneath the sweet spot maybe even, and then you go into the sweet spot, and then if you're driving it too hard in the chorus, you already have this sort of headroom creeping in, you know what I mean? So for me, that's the greatest thing as well about it, this headroom I can always use, because it's so much easier. Most of the time I don't look at the meters at all. Only if there's something, a detail coming to me where I think like, what's happening here, then I'll go in and I'll check it, and then I'll maybe control dynamics for this piece, or even just automate level to just get out of the headroom a little more. But yeah, I mean, everybody that has one now, and I think the hype is now just building. I get so many emails all the time, is just so surprised at how less in the way an AD can be. So congratulations on bringing it back.
Yeah, thank you.
Thank you. Well, yeah, I mean, some of that probably has something to do with the variable gain aspect to it. I mean, there's a lot of there's a lot of things at play there that I think are worth mentioning. Like,
yeah. I mean, I mean, the whole, you know, that our whole discrete analog front end is, you know, I think I'm pretty confident it's pretty unique in that in this audio segment. I think, you know, most manufacturers will use, you know, high feedback op amp, super low measured distortion designs, and so ours, honestly, you know, is not particularly low distortion. I mean, it is respectably low distortion for a zero feedback discrete design, but it does not match, most other designs. But you know, as we found in our, you know, decades of listening, is that that what you have to compromise to get that low distortion compromises the natural sound. That is not what sounds good. And so so that zero feedback that really kind of messes with that really kind of what I consider timing, and yeah, that natural event, it is not worth the sacrifice. And so again, yeah, so that whole front end that is zero feedback, and still respectably low distortion, yeah, and then combined with that again, very natural filter, that it does not add any pre-ring. It does nothing before an event occurs, which does not happen in nature. So again, anything happens afterwards. And so this one, there's no ringing whatsoever with that filter. Again, it's that moving average filter, and so it's what Charley referred to, that perfect transient response. And so yeah, the combination of all those things, yeah, again, mimics nature the best that we can.
that's cool. I like that.
Yeah,
that's a good way to put that.
Then you have something that is so different. That's, I think, the most brilliant thing about it, how different it sounds. Because you can get so many different ADs, and they're just, you know, one has more here, there, one is a little wider, more a little this and that. But basically, the moment the moment I touch an EQ, or the moment I touch any gain stage, it's gone. You know what I mean? Like and the converter is slightly has slightly more bass. The second I just add a quarter dB of top end, this difference is gone. But your AD just has this natural quality. It is so wide as well. It's super weird. It's so wide while being so true. It's really funny.
One thing that you mentioned that maybe we can get some more info from Ariel on is the clocking, and I
just wanted to talk about that.
Yeah, I think that's a big part of it.
Yeah.
So I'll shut up and let Ariel go on that one. But
So I will admit that I'm not you know, very familiar with the whole pro audio side and the mastering side, and so but I know that whole 10 megahertz master clock is a very common thing, which from what I'm familiar with on the like audiophile side, that doesn't make a lot of sense to me. So you know, 10 megahertz is not related to any audio clock, and so it is a good reference, and so it can be used for PLLs and something. But so if you have a perfect low phase noise 10 megahertz clock, that doesn't necessarily translate to, after it converted, to being a really low phase noise, low jitter clock at the converter chip, and that's what matters. And so it is, I mean, that 10 megahertz standard is great for syncing lots of devices together and all these things. But so, you know, and so you're getting QA9, you know, we use, you know, because it can do 44.1 or 48K bass. We have two clocks. They're very high quality clocks. And again, one of the most important things for any oscillator is its power supply. So we spend a lot of attention to the power supply of that clock. And so you can even have a pretty mediocre or cheap oscillator or clock, but if you put a really good power supply on it, it's going to perform better than it would otherwise. But again, so a really good clock, really good power supply, and it's, you know, less than a centimeter away from the converter chip, from that ADC. And so again,
No cable, no connectors.
Yeah, there's no cables, no connectors, there's no radiated. It's right where it needs to be. That's the only place that matters, is at that converter chip. That's the only place that matters.
Yeah.
And so yeah, it does lack that feature of being able to sync with other gear. You know, in the future, I certainly have plans for other products, and I'm working on ways to kind of provide that feature. But it's really hard to get around that, you know, that kind of compromise of having to do that same without compromising that clock quality at the converter chip. So not having that feature is part of the reason why the QA9 is so good. And I'm working on, you know, for the future, how to provide that feature without compromising it. I don't have the answer yet, but someday I will.
And we'll get it
always-
with feedback from great guys like you.
Yeah, but now I don't have to use mine anymore. I think the part why I was using the 10 megahertz clock in the first place is because this brand of AD was working with their 10 megahertz to set. So
yeah.
I understood it as they have their internal crystal, and they had this rubidium, which I didn't like, and now I have a crystal as well, 10 megahertz, and they sort of synthesize the new clock out of those two. And this was maybe the idea. So they are designing their circuit to be better sounding with the expensive clock attached. So you have this, when you try it, that's maybe a factor here. And I felt like the cheaper their interfaces, the more difference this 10 megahertz clock made. So it even made more sense to me. Or the other way is like you have these two clocks that sort of just in front of the AD chip, hopefully synthesize the clock that's actually used. But I was also, in the beginning, I was super skeptical, thinking like, what, 10 megahertz? Like, I've never read that anywhere. We have to go down to the kilohertz. What should I do with megahertz clock? You know, it doesn't make sense.
Yeah,
But I also...
Go ahead.
No, but I also understood, like, in this Delta Sigma, isn't the converter always sort of working in DSD and then downsampling afterwards, or is this not real?
Well, yeah. So the what's referred to as DSD, that is essentially if you tapped off the signal at kind of the beginning of the modulator, that is essentially what you would get. And then it is then decimated down to, down to then a multi-bit signal. The way we use the Ayre chip in the QA9, it has a raw modulator output, and so which is 5 or 6 bits at, I think, 22 megahertz, and so really high rate, but a really low bit resolution. So we extract that from the chip, and then that's what we apply our moving average filter to, and we can then because it's at such a high rate, we can then average that out, get to a higher bit depth at our preferred rate, up to 192 or 384 or whatever it is. And so we don't have to use any of their built-in steep filter, brick wall, decimating filters, and we can apply our special moving average filter to it.
It's funny because the DA I'm using is the Mola Mola Tambaki by Bruno Putzais, and it's also using a moving average filter and basically just asynchronically upsampling to DSD, whatever you deliver. Right. And then has the same, I think it's a 32, how do you call this? Like a 32-step moving average filter that then selects the rightest one. So I was talking to Thomas before that over the years, comparing so many DAs and always being in close contact with the companies, sometimes there were these moments where a company was coming to my studio and we were comparing the DA I was using and then their DA, and they, on most sources, sounded the same. And it was super weird for all of us in the room thinking like, it's so close. Are we doing something wrong here? But if we're building a clean converter and they're both the same clean, they have to sound the same, because clean is clean. You know what I mean? It doesn't, if you're at the similar distortion patterns and ratios, it basically needs to sound the same. It's physics. It's not, you know, that's what I think it's so funny about the hi-fi world, is there's all this magic and stuff around it, but it's all physics. You can measure it and then you can recall it and it will be the same. It's switch it off, switch it on, it will be the same. You know, not to say that everything makes a difference. I have like crazy power cables, fuses, I'm all deep in it, but for the physics of it as well, you know, like the power cables I use have this virgin copper, and it all makes sense in the physical world, and then it also translates into the audio.
Yeah, but as you were saying, clean is sometimes not something that audiophile people latch onto. You know, some of them, and it depends on the type of system, the system you're using. Some people like a bit of flavor in their replay quality. And I found that certainly coming from other brands and using other gear, and I like a bit of flavor. When I first started listening to Ayre gear, one of the things I immediately noticed was the speed, how fast everything was. I listened to a lot of flamenco, so you instantly realize, whoa, that is really responsive in terms of timing. But sometimes I find Ayre gear so neutral on the whole compared to other gear that Willie's not going to like me saying this, but it's my opinion. It can sometimes sound so neutral that if something's wrong at the front end of the chain or somewhere else, you'll realize, and it'll suddenly sound boring or slightly annoying. But once you get rid of that error, wherever it may be, you get you get liveliness, you get vivid replay quality, good tonality, and all that. So, but what was the difference between all those clean AD converters you had before and then the QA9 in terms of, well, you said earlier is,
I mean, I think the clock and the filter and this as you say, like not clean in a sense of a way gain stage, but a featuring gain stage, you know. And for example, for me, again, with the macro dynamics, the more I push into it, the more I get the opening of this gain stage. So it's like an automatic exciter, you know, like you push more level into it and it will open. And so I think, that's the funny way. If you have the good distortion,
so
and
so it's not just about tonality, but about this
dynamics, dynamic harmonics seen in a way. And and just the whole product itself, like I've never had, like, or let's say in the past 10 years, a product that I take out the box and I plug it in and it's just so different, and the other thing then sounds wrong suddenly, you know. This is in this high-end snobby, you know, audio snobby world that I live in. This doesn't happen because everything is really good, but everybody's also using the same chips, the same things. Everybody, you know, there's a new AKM chip coming out, everybody's using that one. There's a new ESS chip coming out, everybody's using that one. It's just always the very same. You just basically buy the newest chip in a nice chassis, power supply, and all the companies, they know it now. Everybody has their layouts checked out, etc. But there is not this like a product like yours is. It's funny. Also, for example, I have all my chain is like, I have some UK gear with ICs now, but the rest is just discrete. There is basically no ICs in there. You know what I mean? So it only makes sense that now, just in front of the AD chip, not having an integrated circuit, even though I'm not against integrated circuits, but it's a different thing. Like just from how like heat dissipation and things, it's a completely different animal if you drive it, if you're working into it the whole day, than having everything just like cramped up. I think also a big factor is that there is no computer inside. There's no display. There's no, like software and anything. It's nothing. It is really just this conversion unit. Basta. If you want to switch sampling rates, get a screwdriver. I mean, that's the funny thing. Some of my friends, I do everything in 96 kilohertz, so I never change it. But some of the mixers that now got, they are just in the beginning, like, how do I switch sampling rates? Yeah, you look around and then you take the dip switch up and down, and that's what you're gonna get used to. But it is also, I think, part of the sound to not have all this software and and extras and it's just plain no interaction with anything.
Yeah, exactly right.
Yeah,
I'd be interested in the QA9, the way you built it 10 years ago with that chassis, and the new version. You did make a few minor changes, didn't you?
Yes, it got a little more, as I've been kind of describing it, masculine. It's got a little bit more stronger kind of shoulders to it.
Yeah, but oh yeah, that's I like the new look. But apart from the look, any changes in the sort of the internals?
No. I did not change anything internally. In theory, I would like to, but then it really becomes a different product, and so I really want to save that kind of stuff for a totally new product. And then also, honestly, I just don't have the time to dedicate to making those changes, playing with those changes, making sure it's improving the product. And so I'm going to save any changes. So no, it is pretty much identical. I have not changed anything about it.
Yeah, and I think in the spirit of getting this project back up and running in a timely fashion, it was appropriate to just rerun it. But it was such a great product when it came out. We just our marketing on it was geared more towards maybe vinyl archiving, and it was kind of tried to be pitched to more of the hi-fi crowd. But a lot of those clients who want to go through with that, they don't realize there's a lot of kind of engineering on the back end. It's like you're recording the songs, but having to manage all those files, and sometimes you're doing it in a DAW or a recording program that it's pretty involved. So for the hi-fi community, an A to D converter, it's not as easy of a sell, but it makes way more sense in the pro and the creative world. I think we're going to start seeing a lot more talk about it because of guys like Zino, and we've got Mark Gallup out here in the US, and Thomas Jorgensen is a composer, a friend of mine that's picked one up. And we're going to start seeing, I think, a lot more musicians and creative types using this product here now. And Zino, one thing I saw, like a little recording interview of you two recently where I really liked this. It said you had said that you don't really like to have kind of like a signature sound almost, or you just kind of you don't want to have some sort of repeatable sound in a sense that is kind of signature to you per se. But it almost sounds like the QA9 gives you everything about the sound that you're looking for without it coloring it in such a specific way every time. Is that maybe kind of a good way to put that?
Yeah, there's a funny thing for a friend of mine who just bought my the old original QA9 Pro that I had, and every time I send a converter to him, he describes it as smooth. And for me, smoothness means less distortion, or for me that's clean, but for him it's smooth. So I think I just want to get everything out of the way. And also when I say this, I obviously do have a sound. You can, if you put 10 tracks from different bands on a CD together, they will work together because they went through my taste and ears, etc. But what I mean with this is, I want to have basically no bottlenecks that I have to work with. We're talking about Headroom again. Like I would, with many of the stuff I do, it starts super low and it ends up in this huge thing. I would have to work with that constantly. automating things, like maybe drive the analog less in this loud part and then push up the digital afterwards and stuff like that. You need to work around, and I just want to have this free canvas basically, that is not part of the sound, because I want to do the sound with all the gear I have, with the tube compressors, the EQs, the saturation boxes, and deliberately push those and play around with the sound instead of being dependent that the AD, which is at the end of the chain, everything will be recorded through this AD. If this does have a strong imprint, then I'll be constantly a slave to this, constantly going like, yeah, like how does it, like, am I pushing it lower, but then the intro is maybe a little too low, and then I have to, you know what I mean? So it's just like this, this completely free, agile canvas that the QA9 gives me.
Yeah,
to not be in, so I can do whatever.
I love that, because I can see how it would allow you to play around with more of your fun saturator boxes and your EQs and compressors that add that color, because you're not so worried about how that's going to stack up with the converter at the end of it too, because if you have a converter,
exactly what you said earlier.
That's exactly what it is. So dependent on this, that you have the canvas to do on top of everything. And it could be a really dirty thing, like you put a mic pre in the signal path, which obviously is, you have to make a pad in front of it to then use it again. The transformers are tiny, etc. But if you do that in this high headroom, very low distortion environment, you can do it deliberately, and you're not always in this bottlenecky situation.
Yes. Yeah, and I love that you're such a hardware guy too. I'm gonna probably disappear when I show this off, but when I was checking out pictures of your studios, I mean, I see a lot of outboard gear, and you've already touched on what D to A you're using, the Mola right now. But maybe walk us through some of the rest of your process, like what software are you using? You get that file out of the Mola, and where does that go from there? Is it going into a switcher and back to the QA9?
Nowadays it's a hardwired chain with one insert. So I'm mainly using 2 NIF EQs, one tube EQ, which is like a Pultec on steroids with real Qs. And if you do 1 dB and you change the Q, the values don't, like the gain value don't change, etc. So it's like a Pultec on steroids, like a real parametric EQ, but passive tube based. And then a custom solid state EQ with super wide Q ranges. So it's also has minimal phase shift. And that EQ is there. There's only 2 in the world. I built this with John Tenif together. And this is like a small mastering console with 4 ins and out. So it has macros. For example, I can lower the analog gain in the chain without the level on the AD changing. So I have a master going, I love all the settings, and I'll just flip a switch, and now the analog sees 1 dB less level, but the AD sees the same level, or 2 dB. So it's just this fast macro, checking out headrooms. How does it sound? Like if something is louder in the analog, then you'll have less top end, maybe less roomy things, and the mids are pushed forward. Or if you go lower, then maybe the mids and bass are not as driving anymore, but you get more of the miniature, tiniest details and things like this. So this also has 1 insert. So those 2 will basically almost always be in the chain, because those are my workhorse EQs, and also this is like my sound, basically, those 2 boxes. But then I have 1 insert, and then on this insert is just a whole battery of all different things. And this is where I'll just go, put a mic pre in, or put some more IC sounding EQ, or some multiband, whatever. And then it goes back in the QA9. So it's always just like a hardwired chain. And I used to have the Maselec mastering console. I still have it here, and that is super clean. Like it literally, like you switch it in and out, sounds like the bypass is broken. That's how clean it is. But from years of experiencing how I want to use the chain, it's just double the cabling, because now I'm in the box and I have to go out to a piece of gear and then back to the console, out, back to the console. So cables for me are not such a big factor, but connectors are. So I have just half the connectors and cabling obviously in the way now. And that does make, again, the details are crazy subtle, but for me, the more often you compare, the more
You zone in on these minute differences.
Yeah, the more important these tiny subtleties get. Same with like fuses. I know, like, I'm also happy to be this lunatic audiophile, and people can make fun of me. It's all right, but I hear the difference. And if you have 10 pieces of gear determining how you sound, and then you have this special fuse in all 10 of them, it makes a difference. Like the air is cleaner, and I have this subtle difference though that maybe only I hear, but in the representation at the very end, that's also very funny when people go like, yeah, so what you do, it's also super high. Do people actually hear this? And it's not about them hearing it, it is about the experience. And all these tiny little steps will get you to this experience where you start the song and maybe you're listening to the very end without talking or doing something, or even on laptops, like small speakers, it just sounds on top of the keys and the other one sounds underneath the keys. And it's all of this like clearing it up again, like word clock, all these things. How are you treating true peaks? How close are you to the zero? All these tiny things down the line, because the conversion, everything will just get worse. If I have a signal, for example, that is super clean, super open, and I'm maybe like half a dB away from zero, a crappy MacBook converter or an iPhone will sound so much better than if I have it squashed at full like square wave on zero, or sadly what most mastering engineers do, above zero. The difference is ridiculous, and so all these I didn't know where I came from, but it's very funny how all these details do make such a difference, that the experience at the very end is something different. And for me, the most important, or the nicest thing about it is the musicians have been doing the records for half a year, whole year, 2 years. They're always in this, I'm doing this, I'm controlling every detail, I need to hear it again, and this hi-hat needs to be that, and and then they send it to me and I send it back, and now they are in the listening position for the first time, and they are hearing their album as the listener now. They're not in this, oh, I need to change this, and it's a completely different way of listening to it now. And if you can do that in this open, free way, where things are more dynamic, more exciting, more growing, and like up and down and all of this, and that's distortion. If it goes up and the distortion is nice, you have some nice K2, K3, opening it up, and less intermodulation, distortion, and all these things that are in the way, then you suddenly have this outerworldly, more dramatic experience. And that's basically, I think, what I've just been listening for all the time. All just like always going back again, like trying out different gear, modifying it, and then power cables, power systems, all this stuff, like just again and again and again, always with blind tests. I never test something just sticking it out and in. I always do it in a locked chain. So for example, if you would bring me an XLR cable that you're very fond of, I would just record something through the one I have, and then just the very end, before the AD, switch this cable, maybe even let it run for an hour so it's a little bit warmed up, whatever, and then do a blind test, then check levels to 2 decimals after the dB value, just to be certain I am not fooling myself here. It's the same level, everything is fine. Or I told it to Thomas before, I have an analyzer, it's a nebula analyzer, and it shows left, right, top to bottom. And if I want to test an EQ versus an EQ, and the cool thing is this analyzer is crazy, like a 0.1 is already moved to the side. So I'll take the EQ and I'll put mono noise through both of them, and then I will see exactly if it's perfectly mono on a 0.1 sort of gain scale, or if there's some wiggle in it. Does it have a little overshoot or zing in the top? Is there a filter in the thing? And that's how you can only only then I think you can objectively compare two things if they're the same level, the same curve. And it's sometimes horror. I told him too that I get gear many times to test, and the first I do is open the box and calibrate it, because you know, like you have, like, it's only a 0.1, 0.2 wiggle, but the sides are off, and it gives you this maybe fake width, or somebody would go like, yeah, this is amazing how wide it sounds or whatever. But I want to have a tool that is clean and well adjusted to then do something to it. Yeah. So if you have the ABX test, and you can also be certain about, because I think also opinions are super big in audio, because everybody's hearing different, and it's really, there's no right or wrong. But if I do this to myself, that I'm just scientifically making these tests, and I have like a big group of friends that are like my focus group, so I make these sort of ABX tests and I send it around, and like with the QA9, everybody is so happy. Like nobody is in any way underwhelmed, or you know, like the hype was so big, I waited so long for it. Everybody's just like, oh my God, I can't believe it.
That's so nice to
Yeah,
hear.
it's yeah. So thanks
Good to
for
hear.
doing this for us. Really, I know it's been a lot of trouble to do it. So thank you for being with us and finishing it.
Well,
So what?
we really appreciate the support, because it's been inspiring for us in a lot of other ways, because you know, for 30 years Ayre has been at the complete opposite end of the signal chain, at the end of the reproduction after it's been created, and we're kind of starting to work our way backwards, and you might see some Ayre equipment that handles the very most important stage of the signal, and it's that initial capture of it too. So it's been really inspiring for us.
Are there any albums that you mastered that you already mastered using the QA9?
Tons.
Tons already.
Yeah,
Okay.
I mean, I had my QA9 for like at least, no, I mean
2 years or something.
Yeah, 2 years. So that's, I don't want to, like, that's easily like 500 albums. I don't know, and many.
Wow.
Like I do a lot. I feel like an album a day is the nice way for me. Like I always dive into it, and I spend the whole day with it. Obviously, I have weekends. I have a daughter as well, so it's like, I think it's been 600 records in like albums and EPs last year. So maybe like 300 albums or something like this. It's been a crazy year last year. So yeah. I'm way, like, I went down. I've been on holidays a lot this year. Try to go down and say no to more things. But
well, I can't wait, after hearing your whole process, I can't wait to go through your discography and start like really listening in on that. And I'm sure our viewers are going to want to now as well, seeing all the length that you go through to handle this delicate stage of the audio signal before it gets to mass production. You know, it's you do everything that I think especially mastering engineers should be doing. Like the thing that really stood out to me with like the fact that you pay attention to every little thing, like fuses, cables, all that, it helps kind of maximize the performance out of the equipment without you trying to do anything, and it makes you have to really work less at it, because like an equalizer, as you know, is like a frequency specific amplifier, right? And so if you feel like you have to add or boost a frequency to correct or get the tonality that you want, you've actually introduced some noise into the signal as well. I mean, you've
phase shift, distortion. Yeah. So you have two problems now, not solved the first one, basically.
Yeah, you've engaged a whole other product that has its own noise floor, and now amplifying in that product has added a new segment of the noise floor to the signal. So, you know, if you're able to achieve a lot of the tonality you want with doing less, it will translate to that more open, spacious kind of sound, more effortless and smooth. So it's just, yeah, you've got a great approach to the whole thing, Zino. I really love it.
Thank you.
Have you got is your list on Discogs
I think yes.
comprehensive?
You can also just go on Tidal, for example, search for my
yeah.
name, and then you can also select, like, sort by date. Obviously there's maybe like half the records on there we always try to tell everyone, please credit. I have a playlist coming, but you know, there's always every week there will be 10 new records out, and you just go like, yeah, I want to have this song from that record. Which one will be first? How do I start this playlist? And then it becomes this, yeah, like never-ending thing to do. But I'm on my website. Just if you Google Zino mastering, that's probably the easiest. There's only one Zino doing mastering. On the website, I always try to at least sort of keep it up to date on the work page with videos. But I think, yeah, title is just on title, put in my name. That is nice. And then on my Instagram, every Friday I post or I try every Friday, maybe sometimes it's every second Friday. I try to post all the releases with audio underneath, so you can already hear what kind of the song is. And I'll select for these 15 seconds in the story, I'll select most of the time my favorite part as well. And then I've had many people over the years tell me that they love my Instagram for this, because because I select very like I only do music that I like, basically. I wouldn't take a project that I don't like, or maybe that is also sometimes sound wise where I think like, yeah, I'm not matching up with this brittle sound or whatever. So it is a very sort of audiophile catalog as well that I have, and that could be a nice source. That's people always go like, is there no playlist of all the stuff you did? Because they always see it, but then they have to go into their software and put it in, and you know, so yeah.
There's one name I'd like to put out there, because I latched onto that when I first went to your website, which is Niels Frahm.
Yeah.
And quite fitting as well, because he's a Berlin-based young pianist. And I listened to Niels Frahm before I met you and before that whole QA9 project started. I think you've not done many of his albums using the QA9, right?
The
one
we have two or three in the pipeline that are not out yet, and I don't know how many.
And the music matters. It's the music that matters.
The music is
in the
sick.
End. Check him out. I'd like he likes to distort the sound of the piano by muting the strings or putting felt on the strings, and it's atmospheric and ethereal, but it's not trite. So
no. And it's also very like, he is the only person I've ever met, or that's hard to say, please cut it out, but like he is somebody, when I am in the front and I think like this bass note is maybe already on the limit, he's on the back, I was like, I don't want the bass to be distorted. I'm like, it is impossible. Like he's the same level of madness, but on the musician side, you know, on like he built his own piano that is 4.50 meters high, for the lowest string to be 4.5 meters long, and all this stuff. So he's just like on this musician side, on another level. He's a big fan of all the German broadcast stuff from the 60s, which is obviously from a technical standpoint was super far ahead, and just like the engineering behind it back then, how much money for R&D and parts, etc. they had. So that's where we sort of diverge. I have all the new shit, and like conversion wise, he's also pretty new, but from all the gear he's using on the other side, the microphones, etc., it's just all the deluxe German old broadcast shit. Obviously has a nice technician that keeps it all nicely recapped and shit. Yeah, exactly. So he's just an incredible sound nerd, and we've done, I think I've just not this week done the 14th album with him, and with him it's always thrilling to be in the studio, because he is on the same attention. And so when you're trying something out and you're too much somewhere, he'll just go like, I don't want my record to sound like this. And you're like, I just tried out this half dB of top end. That was obviously too much, but you know, you just try it out and you leave it in for a little bit to get a feel if you want it, and then you dial it back. But he's so active, and so like his listening experience is also on this crazy level. And the funny thing is, when he came to me 5, 6, 7 years ago, he was mastering records. So, but his career took off so much, and he was about to go on a world tour for 2 years for his all melody album back then. So not only did he bring me his music, but he also brought me all of his mastering clients, or most of his mastering clients. So for me, it was a life-changing moment.
He owes you a drink.
No, I know we've done so many sessions and evenings together. So we're good friends now.
What a geek fest, huh?
Sounds like he needs a QA9 too for that piano.
I was over with my QA9 at his studio, and he's using the how are they called? The whatever. It's a converter that has 4 AD chips inside for different levels. So they're all in 20 dB increments, and it automatically switches to the one that has the best
Matching.
yeah, so that is perfect for the signal. So if you would clip one, it will just go like, no, then we're using the signal from that one. And Stage Tech, it's the company called. Also ridiculously expensive, unbelievable. And he tested everything. He had a barrel system before, a big one, and then he got this one. And I was like, yeah, I'm just gonna bring mine. And then we were at the studio about to listen to it, and he's like, yeah, I have no AES inputs. I was like, so we can't do that. No, he would need to buy an AES card for crazy money for us to test it. But nowadays he mixes everything over a custom desk he built, crazy desk with old Lavo modules, which are basically the cleanest of all these old German broadcast things. So it's a completely passive desk with insane amounts of relays, with all those old broadcast modules. Like, he even has his own reverb chamber, a real reverb chamber just for himself. Can you imagine this? This is really on another level. And now he's recording everything to DSD on the old Tascam DSD recorder. And then I master from DSD to PCM. So the only PCM his mixes are seeing is the QA9. Anything else is DSD at this point.
Cool. We'll have to...
So that's how you can show like he's a proper infected nerd.
Yeah, he's part of the club.
Yeah. Yeah, it's fun.
That's amazing. So other than the QA9, I guess, I'm curious, this might be good market research for us. What's your other most critical piece of mastering equipment that you use? What's another piece that stands out in your rig that maybe you couldn't?
I mean, for me, the combination of the Mola, Tambaki, and the QA9 is almost like an upsampling kind of thing. The way the Mola has this huge low end and it's so clean, and then you have the openness of the QA9. The two in conjunction with each other are basically like an upsampling thing. I was always thinking like I could just literally run it through the two things, and it would be so much better, like so much more it's always the processing side, and then in Germany we say Wirkebene. So how does it appeal to you? You have the same thing, for example, if you reamp synth, and then you have the sound go through air, and then you put it in a microphone. It's the same thing here. You sort of physically, you make it an analog waveform, and then you put it back. And the way they do it together is like it's cheating, basically. That's also the word that people tell me now, like, yeah, this AD is like cheating. And I was like, yeah, I can understand, because there used to be so many problems for us to get this. And you know, most mastering consoles, they have a way to just listen to the analog output of the console, and then you listen to the AD, and you would never listen to the analog output because the signal after the AD is so different that if you would master on the analog output and then listen to the AD, you would have to master it again because it's so different. You know, so this how things are perceived, and this the level of reality sort of you can achieve with this combination of the two is crazy. We were also talking like, do you have a DA that would be comparable to the Tambaki?
Well, yeah.
to the
Well, I'm
QA9.
not familiar with that piece, but
um,
well, we are. We have a few DAs, and we are. That's one of the things that we are possibly best known for is our D to A technology, and so I'm curious to look into that for sure.
Yeah, we might have to get you a demo QX5 or
Yeah.
Yeah, I can take care of that.
Yeah, and also we have a special small allotment of QB9s that are kind of in the same fashion as this QA9. So that would be another thing worth looking at too. So
Except that that's USB only, but
that is USB only, but yeah, the QX5 would give a lot more connectivity options for a D to A converter. And all of the technology wise that you like from the QA9.
Yeah. So I understood that you were the first to do the asynchronous USB back in the day.
Yeah, I think we were one of the first to actually produce a true high-end asynchronous USB. I don't think we were technically the first. Because we got our technology from Gordon Rankin of wavelength audio, and so he helped us produce that. And so yeah, and we were one of the first to have a true high-end asynchronous USB.
Nice. I actually always wanted to try out how the USB sounds on the QA9 because I'm using it over AS. So I was always wondering, like, if maybe the USB sounds different, better. Who knows? It's just not a workflow thing for me.
Yeah, I mean, it shouldn't because at that point it is just the digital data. And so it depending on what you do with it after that, if you're storing that or if you're listening to it live, are very different things. But so I mean, it should be the exact same bits, right? It's the exact same data, and so.
That's enough for me to not ever test it. Thank you.
Very cool. Well, I can see it's getting kind of late there for you guys. It looks like it's getting a little dark, but I just this has been so enlightening for us. I think there's a lot of ideas that are kind of being conjured up around here, and just the fact that you have been using this so excitedly for the last few years, and we've got a community of users on the QA9 out there. It's really kind of lit a fire for us. So it's just really awesome to hear all this, and we're looking forward to linking some more people to your studio. We'll throw up links in the video that we post to your title, and maybe if you're on Qobuz, I'll find you and link it on there too. And
thank you.
And yeah, I know Thomas lives right next to one of my favorite German retailers, Thomann Music, and so maybe we can have a conversation with Thomann one day to start carrying the QA9 as well.
But I mean, you only have 40 units. Those are going to be gone very soon.
40 of this one. 40 of this one. We might have to redesign.
Is there another chip that is as interesting, or like that's the bottleneck, right? We don't have the chip.
We don't have more of the Ayre chip beyond the 50 we have. But there are there is an older chip that has similar features that we can use, and that's actually achieves very similar results. And then there is a newer chip that I think we might be able to use that also provides the same features. So there are some other options out there. And it's not just dead in the water. So we'll be able to use the same techniques.
Amazing. I always love new gear, so please give us some new gear.
It worked.
Yeah, I would love to be able to do some auditions and listening to some of those chip options too, because I mean, yeah, because the Ayre chip was kind of made by audiophile nerds. It sounds like it is why it's so special. I mean, they weren't as concerned about just this generic analog signal to digital conversion, which could be anything other than music too. It's yeah, they made it with like kind of music in mind, you know.
I've heard of this chip long before I heard of your converter.
Really?
Like this chip was always something where people told me like, but then you need to build your own. And I was like, okay, I'm going to build my own AD to use this chip. And then to find out like, no, I'm never going to build my own AD. That's just bullshit. But it's funny that then again, you know, like finding out about your product, going like, aha, they're using this chip.
And it pops up somewhere else.
Yeah, and it's so funny that you pretty much put all the things that are appealing to me as a mastering engineer technically into this product. That's funny.
I've loved hearing all the little synchronicities about your story, kind of getting into the QA9 and like how you acquired it. I mean, we're friends with Philip Guten Tag at Vivid. We love Vivid. Ayre and Vivid stuff sounds great together anyway. So just the whole thing with how you've discovered it, how you've come into the fold with us in a sense, and it's just, yeah, the stars aligned.
Yeah, totally. And now everybody's happy.
It's good. Well, maybe we'll if traveling to Munich isn't too bad for you, maybe we'll have to have you as a guest of honor in Munich if we exhibit out there. That'd be
I would love that.
Yeah,
I would love that.
At the Munich show in May.
Yeah. Next year. Yeah, I would love that.
May.
Yeah,
I am from Munich actually. So
Oh.
it's perfect. I haven't been there. I haven't been there in a long time. I'll visit.
Have you been to the hi-fi show?
Amazing.
There, Munich high end?
I've never been. I've had some companies over the years, hi-fi companies, for example, the Fuse company that told me about it and wanted me to be there. But then COVID came and it all bye-bye. So yeah, I'm very looking forward. I also I hope there's some like massive speakers to listen to. I really want to hear all the big systems, because now I have a super big system. I always want to know like how, because most of these I have a product, when you look at them, you go like, yeah, no, that will never sound good. There's so many edges on this speaker, like really, but then you have to listen to it, you know, and stuff like that. So I'm really would be happy to get into this tourist mode and just go through the fair and just go like, okay, what is this? What is that? And yeah, would love to. You can even like book me for every day. I'll just happily blah blah for hours.
Well, yeah, spend a little time with us and then go explore.
Yeah, recording this. He said he'll do.
Yeah, no, I will definitely do it. I'm down for it.
Yeah.
I'll also bring some music and play something on the system you have and stuff like that. Yeah,
That'd be really fun.
we can also like do before and afters, so people can get an idea what is happening in the mastering stage or all the stuff. I'm always happy to. I think also like you have this pro audio and the hi-fi, and there's always this thing like the pro audio guys. They say like, no, but this is a hi-fi speaker, and I'm like, yeah, what
Should be doing the same, really.
Yeah, that's the funny thing. And then if you get to the best companies of pro audio and hi-fi, they do the very best thing. The only problem is pro audio always has a budget cap. And that is the big flaw of pro audio. It just gets cheaper and cheaper and cheaper and cheaper because the modules get better and cheaper. So yes, technically you could say the 20 euro amp we just bought is the same as Lala from Specs. But and that's why I'm so like in the past years I've been sort of going into this hi-fi world, because it's a different way of like no budget cap, and people are just like burning for this on another level instead of just watching their numbers and profits and marketability all the time. So that's why I'm super happy to come to Munich. Let's do it.
Wow, there you go.
That'd be amazing. Well, I don't know if I have much more questions. I don't want to keep you guys all day and all night here, but maybe we can have a follow-up sometime. I know I could talk engineering stuff with you forever, I'm sure that would just end up going on and on. So
I'm always down. Next time we'll have beers though.
Oh,
yeah, for sure. It's kind of early for beers for us.
Yeah, the time difference is it was kind of tricky. So, but meeting on a Friday, that'll work.
Yeah. All right, guys.
All
Well,
right,
I appreciate it. I might hit stop on this record session here unless there's any other final thoughts that you want to share about anything QA9 mastering, advice to anyone listening that wants to get into it? Anything like that?
Just start listening and concentrate, like listen. All the rest is just procrastination. For me, at least, you know, if you start listening, you can have no idea what a piece of gear does, but you will be able to set it to a nice setting. If you don't have any listening experience and you know all about a piece of gear, that doesn't give you anything. Now you're just on the technical side, and yeah, it's always about the listening and then making an emotional decision for what you're working on. Yeah, but I'm not anti-processing at all, but it's just like the listening is number one. I've always get these people write me like if I could do a workshop or if I could, and I'm always intrigued and would love to do it, but then it would always need a huge system in a nice room, and then we would just listen for 1-2 hours before we even talk, because the listening and like syncing up this listening experience is much more important than any sort of nice processing step, whatever, because you don't know when and how you would add this processing step if you don't have the listening experience. So, and I think it's probably the same with designing gear. You could be sitting in front of the oscilloscope or some analyzer the whole day, but then when you're listening to it, you don't know if this is good or better or whatever, you know, because you need to, for example, I think the most hard thing to learn to listen to hear is distortion, to really hear it, what it does. But once you hear it, you can't unhear it. Now it's everywhere in every piece, you know. So it is as nice. I mean, like hearing distortion is really the last realm of audio things, I feel. But yeah, just listen and enjoy it, and also maybe get a system that is not hyped, where everything you know sounds like you know it and not more exaggerated in any way, because now you've created absolute hell for yourself. For example, you have a speaker with ridiculous low end and top end. Now everything you do needs to have this ridiculous low end and top end, and it's going to be a nightmare, because you will never be happy with anything, because you know you need to do something to it to have this wow sound of the speaker for it to be flat.
Right.
So just get a natural environment where anything you know sounds exactly how you know it, unflattering as most unflattering as possible, and you'll have the best time, you know. Yeah, blab.
That's perfect. I love it. Yeah, I mean, gosh, there's so much more I want to talk to you guys about, but we'll probably leave it at an hour here, and we'll have a
Let's
part
go live from Munich next year.
Yeah, it'll be fun.
For hours.
Yeah, yeah, and maybe on location too. I'd love to visit the studio.
Please come by.
Yeah, that would be amazing.
Please.
All right, guys. Well, cheers. Thank you so much. I'm all out of my caffeine, and looks like you guys are empty too.
Oh, we need air glasses. Do you have air glasses?
I don't, but sure you can bring some.
We can work that out.
We'll exchange for some glasses of my studio.
Ooh,
The
Yes,
the
that was
Atmos.
the name of the studio.
Yeah, and
That
we'll
is
have- there you go. That's a great seed to plant. That could be another follow-up episode, because we were talking about mastering with Zino. Next time, maybe we can talk Atmos with Zino. That'd be fun. That'd be cool.
Could
I see
become
you-
sad too because of Atmos release files, but the Atmos itself is nice. Yeah, there's a huge bottleneck in the release of those mixes, but yeah, I mean that's life. There's a bitter note to things.
Yeah. Well, your Atmos Lab studio looks fantastic from what I've seen, and we're worth talking about. So we'll do that soon. But anything you have left, Ariel?
No.
All right, guys. I think we're
Have a
good.
good day.
Thank you very much.
Yeah, thank
Bye-bye.
you.